The spacecraft pierced the Earth's atmosphere. The heat shield glowed a fiery red as it battled the intense friction. I could feel the vibrations through the hull, a reminder of the thin line between success and catastrophe. It was a rough landing. The impact jolted me in my seat, and for a moment I feared the worst. Dust and debris filled the air, obscuring my view of the outside world. I'd been gone for a decade, 10 years of isolation, drifting through the void of space with only the hum of the spacecraft for company. 10 long years on a mission to Kepler 186f, a distant exoplanet that held the promise of a new beginning for humanity. It was meant to be humanity's new home, a beacon of hope. We had high expectations, dreams of a fresh start on a world that seemed so similar to our own. Now, returning to Earth, I felt a chill, a sense of foreboding that I couldn't shake off. The planet I once called home felt alien to me. The planet was shrouded in an eerie silence. No signs of life, no bustling cities, just an unsettling stillness that hung in the air. My heart sank as I gazed upon the blue planet. It was still the same beautiful Earth, but something was undeniably wrong. It was still beautiful from space. The ocean sparkled, the continents stretched out below, but the vibrant life that once thrived seemed to have vanished. But something felt amiss. The atmosphere had an unusual hue, and strange weather patterns swirled across the surface. I tried to contact mission control. Static. I tried other frequencies, more static. Panic began to set in as I realized I was alone. An unsettling silence greeted me. The familiar voices of mission control were absent, replaced by an oppressive quiet. My heart pounded in my chest. What had happened here? The Earth looked different, wrong. The landscapes were altered, and the air felt heavy with an unspoken dread. I landed my craft in what was once a bustling metropolis. The city that should have been alive with activity was now a ghost town. Now it was eerily deserted. Streets that once teemed with people were empty, and the silence was deafening. Buildings stood tall and lifeless. Their windows, once glowing with light, were now dark and foreboding. They were like silent sentinels guarding a forgotten secret. The world I had returned to was not the one I had left. It was a silent Earth, holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I stepped out of the spacecraft. The world that greeted me was eerily silent, a stark contrast to the bustling Earth I once knew. The air felt different, almost as if it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. My boots crunched on the deserted tarmac. Each step echoed in the emptiness, a reminder of the life that once thrived here. The ground beneath me felt cold and unwelcoming, as if it had forgotten the warmth of human presence. The air was still, heavy. It was as if the city itself was mourning, draped in a shroud of silence. The buildings stood like solemn sentinels, guarding the memories of a time long past. I felt a shiver down my spine. The silence was deafening. It was a silence that spoke volumes, telling tales of abandonment and loss. It was a silence that seemed to seep into my very soul, making me acutely aware of my solitude. It pressed against me, suffocating me. Where was everyone? The streets that once bustled with life were now empty, devoid of any sign of human activity. It was as if the city had been frozen in time, waiting for its inhabitants to return. Where were the sounds of life, the laughter, the joy that once filled these streets? The playgrounds were empty, the swings swaying gently in the breeze, as if moved by the ghosts of children who once played there. The traffic, the honking of cars, the chatter of pedestrians, all replaced by an oppressive silence. The roads stretched out before me, empty and desolate, like veins devoid of blood. I ventured deeper into the abandoned city. Each step I took amplified the silence. I walked for hours, my mind racing with questions. What had happened here? Why had everyone disappeared? Each step I took amplified the silence. I walked for hours. The city seemed endless, a labyrinth of empty streets and towering buildings. It was a place that once thrived with life, now reduced to a ghostly shell. The skyscrapers loomed over me. They were like empty giants, their windows dark and lifeless. They stood as silent witnesses to the passage of time, their once vibrant facades now faded and worn. They were like empty giants. Their presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a reminder of the fragility of human existence. They seemed to watch my every move, their glassy eyes reflecting the emptiness below. They watched my every move. Their glassy eyes reflected the empty streets below. It was as if the city itself was alive, observing me, judging me. Their glassy eyes reflected the empty streets below. The silence was broken only by the sound of my own breathing. It was a stark reminder of my isolation, a sound that seemed to echo through the empty streets. The silence was broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the crunch of my boots on the pavement. Each step was a reminder of the life that once was, a life that now seemed like a distant memory, and the crunch of my boots on the pavement. This wasn't the Earth I knew, the Earth I remembered. This was something else, something alien. It was a place that had been abandoned, left to decay in silence. This wasn't the Earth I knew, the Earth I remembered. This was something else, something alien. It was a place that had been abandoned, left to decay in silence. A place that once thrived with life, now reduced to a haunting reminder of what once was. Days turned into weeks. I explored the desolate wasteland. I searched for any sign of life, but there was nothing. Just the ruins of a once great civilization. The silence was ever present, but sometimes it shifted. I'd hear whispers on the wind, faint ethereal sounds, like voices carried from a distant realm. Were they real or figments of my imagination? I couldn't be sure. I began to see things too, flickering movements in the shadows, shapes that vanished when I got too close. The silence was no longer empty, it was full of unseen eyes, watching me, studying me. I started to feel like a specimen under a microscope, an outsider in a world that was both familiar and utterly alien. The silence was broken one night. I was camped out in the ruins of a skyscraper. A low hum reverberated through the air. It vibrated in my teeth, my bones. I looked out over the cityscape. In the distance, a faint glow pulsed against the horizon. What was it? Curiosity gnawed at me. I had to know. I gathered my meager supplies and set off towards the light. The journey was perilous. The ruins were unstable. The shadows seemed to deepen around me as I travelled, as if sensing my fear. The humming grew louder with each step. It was a constant throbbing presence. It filled me with a sense of dread. I couldn't escape it. It felt like the city itself was watching me. Section 5, the first encounter. I finally reached the source of the light. It was a massive structure. It rose from the ground like a metallic monolith. Its surface pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly glow. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. I approached cautiously, my hand hovering over the laser pistol at my side. The humming reached a fever pitch. As I got closer, I saw them, figures silhouetted against the glowing structure. They were tall and slender. Their limbs were elongated and graceful. They moved with an unnatural fluidity. They were like nothing I had ever seen before. Were these the creatures responsible for the Earth's silence? I had to know. I stepped into the light. The figures turned towards me. Their eyes glowed with an eerie luminescence. They didn't speak, but I could feel their gaze piercing me, studying me, dissecting me. I tried to communicate. I spoke of my mission, my return, the silence that greeted me. They listened patiently, their expressions unreadable. Then one of them stepped forward. It raised its hand, and in that moment an image flashed into my mind. It was a vision, a memory, not my own. It was the memory of Earth's final days, a cataclysmic event, a natural disaster of unprecedented scale, the end of humanity as we knew it. The vision faded. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. The Earth hadn't been invaded, it hadn't been conquered, it had been cleansed. The creatures before me weren't invaders, they were caretakers. They had arrived after the disaster, drawn by the planet's silence. They were here to heal, to rebuild, to shepherd the Earth into a new age. The creatures communicated through images and emotions. They showed me their efforts to restore the planet. Their technology was advanced, beyond anything humanity had ever achieved. They were repairing the damage. They were nurturing life back into existence. They were the guardians of Earth's future. I spent weeks with the creatures, learning about them, understanding their purpose. They were not human, but they possessed a wisdom and compassion that surpassed any earthly species. They had saved our planet. They were giving it a second chance. They had become the new inhabitants of Earth, the rightful heirs to a world humanity had left in ruins. I watched them as they worked. Their movements were fluid and precise. They moved with a grace that was almost hypnotic. They were like artists, and the Earth was their canvas. They were painting a new future, a future where humanity was a distant memory, a cautionary tale. It was time for me to leave. The moment had arrived, and there was no turning back. The weight of my mission pressed heavily on my shoulders, but I knew it was necessary. The spacecraft hummed with a familiar energy, a blend of technology and hope. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the journey ahead. My presence served only as a reminder of a painful past. The creatures understood. They had seen the devastation, the mistakes, the hubris of humanity, yet there was no malice in their eyes, only a deep, ancient wisdom. They had taken on the role of guardians, protectors of a world that was no longer ours. They guided me back to my spacecraft. Their movements were graceful, almost ethereal, as if they were in tune with the very essence of the planet. Each step we took was a silent acknowledgement of the past and a hopeful stride towards the future. I felt a strange sense of camaraderie with these beings, a connection that transcended words. As I prepared for departure, I looked back at the Earth. The sight was breathtaking, a stark contrast to the desolation I'd once known. The blues and greens of the planet seemed more vibrant than ever, a testament to the resilience of life. It was a bittersweet moment, knowing that I was leaving behind a world that had finally begun to heal. It was a world reborn, lush and vibrant. The silence was gone. In its place was a symphony of life, a chorus of sounds that spoke of renewal and hope. The air seemed to hum with energy, a living testament to the planet's recovery. It was as if the Earth itself was singing a song of triumph, replaced by a symphony of sounds. The melodies of nature filled the air, each note a reminder of what had been lost and what had been regained. The rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the gentle murmur of streams, all these sounds blended into a harmonious orchestra that celebrated life. The wind whispering through the trees, the chirping of insects, these were the sounds of a world that had found its balance once more. It was a symphony that played on, undisturbed by the chaos that had once reigned. Each sound was a note in the grand composition of life, a testament to the planet's resilience. The distant roar of a waterfall, it was a sound that spoke of power and tranquility, a reminder of the natural forces that shaped the world. The water cascaded down, carving its path through the landscape, a symbol of the relentless flow of time and the enduring spirit of the earth. As I ascended into the vast emptiness of space, I couldn't shake the feeling of hope. Humanity may have failed, but in our absence, life on Earth had found a way to flourish once more. The planet had healed, nurtured by the very beings we once feared. It was a humbling realization, a reminder of our place in the grand tapestry of existence. But life on Earth had found a way to flourish once more. The landscapes were teeming with life, a vibrant mosaic of ecosystems that thrived under the watchful eyes of their new caretakers. It was a sight that filled me with a profound sense of awe and gratitude. In the hands of these enigmatic caretakers, our planet had been granted a second chance, a chance to evolve, to heal, to become something extraordinary. These beings had taken on the mantle of guardianship with grace and wisdom, guiding the Earth towards a future that was brighter than any we could have imagined. The Earth was no longer ours. It had transcended our influence, becoming a sanctuary for life in its purest form. It was a world that had moved beyond the scars of the past, embracing a future filled with endless possibilities. But perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, that was a good thing. Our departure had allowed the Earth to heal, to grow, to become something greater than we could have ever envisioned. As I drifted further into the cosmos, I carried with me a glimmer of hope, a hope that life in all its forms would continue to thrive and evolve, no matter the challenges it faced.